Evolution is a dangerous philosophy because it's the foundation for racism. The idea that one race of people is superior to another comes from evolution. Here's Darwin's book, The Origin of Species. That's not the whole title. And by the way, the theory was popular way before Darwin. Okay, he made it more popular, but Aristotle taught a form of evolution in 400 BC. The Egyptians taught evolution to Moses when he was in school. They said life evolved from the slime on the Nile River. Moses learned that growing up. Later, edited the book of Genesis. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Didn't faze him, okay? The textbooks will show you that there are different species of animals. Origin of species. Now, wait a minute. There might be different species, but they're the same kind of animal, quite obviously. Now, this textbook gives a little more of the title. It says, that Darwin wrote a book called The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection. Oh, they're lying. They're not giving the whole title. I've got it right here in my hand. Here's the title of the book. The Origin of Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Favored races? Now, Charlie, that's not politically correct. Oh, it was in 1859 when he wrote the book. We had slavery in America. Darwin thought natives were just advanced animals. Darwin said at some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace the savage races. Darwin said from the war of nature and famine and death, the most exalted object we're capable of conceiving, the production of higher animals, follows. Higher animals. Well, see, that was popular to say in 1859. We had slavery in this country. You could buy and sell Negroes like cows. Henry Fairfield Osborn from the American Museum of Natural History said, the standard intelligence of the average adult Negro is similar to that of the 11-year-old youth of the species Homo sapien. Now, if a professor said that today, how long would he keep his job? Stephen Gould knew this was true. He said biological arguments for racism may have been common before 1850, but they increased by orders of magnitude following the acceptance of evolutionary theory. Huxley said no rational man cognizant of the facts believes the average Negro is the equal, still less the superior of the white man. Kingsley, Anglican priest, said the black people of Australia, exactly the same race as the African Negro, cannot take in the gospel. They can't be saved. All attempts to bring them to a knowledge of the true God have as yet utterly failed. Poor brutes in human shape, they must perish off the face of the earth. Kingsley was the Anglican priest who went around promoting Darwin's book when it came out. In 1860, Kingsley wrote a letter to his wife after he visited Ireland from the potato famine, where 1 million people died. He said, I am haunted by the human chimpanzees I saw along the 100 miles of horrible country. To see white chimpanzees is dreadful. If they were black, one would not feel it so much. But their skins, except where tanned by exposure, are as white as ours. Here's these Irish people starving from the potato famine. Kingsley drives by and looks at them and says, oh, these poor white chimpanzees. He thought they hadn't evolved as far. The Mormons teach, Mormons in this life, or Negroes in this life, are denied the priesthood. Negroes are not equal with other races. It's the Lord's doing. It's based on His law of spiritual laws of justice and grows out of the lack of spiritual valiance of those concerned in the first estate. See, the Mormons teach babies in heaven are born first. The Heavenly Father has thousands of wives and has spirit babies. If they're a good spirit baby, when they come to earth, they get a white-skinned body. If they're a bad spirit baby, they get a black-skinned body. That's what they teach. Mormon Doctrine by Bruce McConkie. He said, it's a divine decree. Cain, Ham, and the whole Negro race have been cursed with black skin, the mark of Cain. Mormon Apostle Peterson said, if there's a drop of Negro blood in my children, as I've read to you, they receive the curse. Mormon President Brigham Young said, shall I tell you the law of God regarding the African race? If the white man who belongs to the chosen seed mixes his blood with the seed of Cain, under the penalty under the law of God is death on the spot. This will always be so. You should read some books about Mormonism and see what they've done in the last few hundred years over this teaching of racial superiority. See, racism was popular in the 1800s. I mean, they would buy the slaves and put them on ships and pack them in as tight as they could. If a bunch died, oh well, save as many as you can. But they sold them on the market. Some people thought some leaders in America thought the Aborigines were not as evolved as the white man because the Aborigines have a bigger jaw. Their jaw bones are bigger. Eskimos in Australia, in Alaska have the same thing. They have bigger jawbones. And he said, well, that's because they've evolved. They're not as evolved from the apes as we are. No, it's because they use their jaws all the time like a vice. They don't carry a toolbox around with them. They wander around a lot, so they don't want to carry 50 pounds of tools. When they want to pull the skin off of something, they hold it in their teeth and pull the skin off. They use their teeth. They use their jaw muscles all the time. And any bodybuilder will tell you the more you use your muscles, the bigger your bones get. It actually develops the bones also. The mental life of savages rises little above that of higher mammals, especially the apes, with which they are genetically connected. The intelligence moves within the narrowest bounds, and one can no more or less speak of their reason than that of the more intelligent animals. These lower races, such as the Vedas or Australian Negroes, are psychologically nearer to the mammals, apes or dogs, than to civilized Europeans. We must therefore assign a totally different value to their lives. That's Ernst Haeckel, the guy that lied about the gill slits. At the beginning of the white settlement, this is in Australia, there were an estimated 300,000 Aborigines all over Australia. Aborigines were viewed by the settlers as primitive, savage, unchanging. In addition to warfare, killings, water, flour, and sugar were poisoned, and diseases like smallpox, measles, and influenza were introduced intentionally to lower the population. It was the law. You could kill Aborigines if you wanted. How many saw the movie Quigley Down Under, where he was brought in to kill the Aborigines? Because he was a marksman. Every single Tasmanian Aborigine was killed. Why? I think the evolution theory is directly responsible for what happened to the slaughter of the Aborigines. These two people went to Australia to collect skulls for the museums in America. Here's your article right here. A New South Wales missionary was a horrified witness to the slaughter by mounted police of a group of dozens of Aboriginal men, women, and children. 45 heads were boiled down and the best 10 skulls packed off for overseas. They shot them just to get the bones. Smithsonian has 33,000 sets of human remains in their basement. They call it the Army of the Potomac. These are used as evidence for evolution. Charles Darwin's cousin, Francis Galton, started a movement called the eugenics movement to purify the human race. Let's get rid of some of these inferior races. They drew in from all branches of science to make eugenics, to improve humanity. We could spend days talking about eugenics, but these ideas gave rise to American laws that empowered doctors to sterilize people they judged to be unfit. As a result, Black estimates that some 60,000 people were sterilized in the United States over the course of the 20th century. Some doctor thought, oh, they're not fit to be a mom or a dad. They sterilized them. This is in America. The most chilling, though, were the ways which American eugenics influenced their German counterparts. Hitler said, I have studied with great interest the laws of several American states concerning the prevention and reproduction by people whose progeny would, in all probability, be of no value or be injurious to the racial stock. In 1904, St. Louis had the World's Fair. They brought in 2,000 what they said were primitive people and had a big display about the primitive people to demonstrate the superiority of the white man. That's 100 years ago, folks. Oda Benga was put in a cage with chimpanzees. He was taken away from his wife and 2 kids. They put him in with the chimpanzees as part of the display so people come by and laugh at how primitive the pygmies were. He died. He committed suicide. Oda did. He's buried in Lynchburg, Virginia. Roosevelt thought the Indians were an inferior species because they hadn't evolved as far. Roosevelt said, I wish the wrong people could be prevented entirely from breeding. He thought the immigrants from Europe, Scotland, Ireland, and the Orient were a threat to American society. How many of you have ancestors from one of those places? Oh, you're inferior species, according to these guys, okay? In 1871, Congress scrapped all treaties with the Indians and moved them off to the reservation system they're still using today. The Cherokees, down where we're from in Florida in that area, were moved off to Oklahoma, or to Indiana, Oklahoma, Indian Territory. 1/3 of them died along the forced journey, called the Trail of Tears, because our leaders thought they were an inferior species. We could spend all day on that one. The Bible says we've all got one Father. No reason to be a racist. All God hath made of one blood all nations of men to dwell upon the earth. Darwin also said, a married man is a poor slave, worse than a Negro. I never met his wife, but if a guy said that, if a college professor said that today, How long would he keep his job? Or his life? Yeah. Darwin said the chief distinction in intellectual powers of the two sexes is shown by man's attaining to a higher eminence in whatever he takes up than can woman. Whether requiring deep thought, reason, or imagination, or merely the use of senses and hands, the average mental power in man must be above that of women. He said man has ultimately become superior to women, poetry, strength, voice, etc. Darwin believed in inbreeding. He married his first cousin, Emma Wedgwood. He wanted to have a superior stock. They produced 10 children. Mary died shortly after birth. Anne died at age 10. Robert, born retarded, died at 19 months. Henrietta had a serious nervous breakdown. Three of his six sons were so ill, they ill so often, Charles thought they were semi-invalids. So much for your superior stock, Charlie. Evolution is a bad tree, has a bad root, brings forth evil fruit. Evolution is the foundation for immorality. It's the foundation for humanism, the foundation for racism. And now we're going to cover evolution is the foundation philosophy for Nazism, communism, and the New World Order. Evolution, the foundation for Nazism. Why did Hitler do what he did? Now Mussolini, the dictator in Italy, thought the Italians were the superior species that deserved to rule the world. So did the Germans, so they linked up together for a while.